You see it all the time. Someone who can move enormous weight in the gym, but they lack resilience to the simple stresses of daily life. This is the strength paradox. We are going to investigate the physiological mechanisms that drive this vulnerability and then detail the specific protocol engineered to resolve it. This disconnect isn't a fluke. It actually reveals a systemic flaw in conventional training. You see, the ability to manage a predictable, heavy load like a barbell is a completely separate physical quality from the ability to absorb the sudden, unpredictable forces you encounter in the real world. So what's the source of this fragility? It's not a lack of muscle. The vulnerability comes from a fundamental disparity, a gap, in how the body's different tissues respond and adapt to the very same training stimulus. The whole paradox boils down to differential adaptation rates. Your muscle tissue grows bigger and stronger pretty quickly in response to volume and repetition. But your tendons, which anchor those muscles to your bones, they're on a totally different schedule. They adapt far more slowly, and their strength increases through sustained time under tension. That's what stimulates collagen remodeling, the methodical rebuilding of their protein matrix. And here's the number that really defines the problem: 3 times. Tendons adapt about 3 times slower than their corresponding muscles. This lag creates a dangerous structural imbalance, especially after age 40. You end up with powerful muscles that can generate forces far exceeding what their unprepared tendon anchors can withstand. The entire system is primed for failure. The solution, then, is to directly load the tendons with the precise stimulus they need to adapt. By applying specific, controlled stress, you signal the physiological remodeling and strengthening process. If you avoid that stress, you just perpetuate their weakness, which only increases your risk of injury. This brings us to the protocol itself, which is a systemic intervention. It's a system of 5 targeted isometric holds, and this protocol is a comprehensive intervention engineered to systematically rebuild the body's foundational integrity by targeting the connective tissue system. The protocol consists of these 5 holds: the standing calf raise hold, the Spanish squat hold, the deep push-up hold, the wall external rotation hold, and the active dead hang. Each one of these was chosen because it targets a critical junction in the kinetic chain, an area with a high rate of tendon-related failure. First up is the standing calf raise hold, which targets the Achilles tendon. Strengthening this structure is absolutely essential for athletic power and also for preventing the progressive loss of mobility that's associated with its degradation as you age. To execute this, you stand on a step edge, lower your heels into a deep stretch, and simply hold that bottom position. This sustained hold under load is a form of eccentric loading, meaning you're stressing the tissue while it lengthens. This is the specific stimulus that triggers adaptive collagen remodeling within the tendon. Now, 3 common inners will completely negate the stimulus here. Holding the top position loads the muscle, not the tendon. Bouncing at the bottom interrupts the sustained tension required for adaptation. And progressing your hold time too quickly just induces inflammation instead of strengthening. Next, the Spanish squat hold. This directly strengthens the patellar tendons and is a primary intervention for knee pain. Its design cleverly isolates the tendon from the high compressive forces that so often irritate the joint during conventional loaded squats. For the setup, you'll position your back against a wall, put a resistance band around your knees, and then descend until your thighs are parallel to the floor. The band applies an inward force that your patellar tendons must actively resist, and that creates the precise isometric stress needed for adaptation. The angle of the hold is the critical variable here. A position that's too shallow fails to load the tendon sufficiently, but a position that's too deep creates excessive joint compression. A parallel thigh angle is the optimal position for maximizing tendon load while minimizing that joint stress. The deep push-up hold addresses common issues like tennis elbow and carpal tunnel syndrome. What it does is strengthen the tendons of the elbow and wrist by loading them at their most vulnerable point, the very end range of motion. The correct position is at the bottom of a push-up, with your chest 1 to 2 inches from the floor and your elbows kept close to your body. This creates maximum stretch and tension on the forearm tendons. You can also perform the hold from your knees to reduce the overall load while still preserving that critical end range position. The most common error is holding the position too high, somewhere in the mid-range. This avoids stressing the tendons at their weakest point, which is at full stretch, and therefore it fails to provide the primary stimulus for adaptation. This next hold is a preventative intervention for shoulder impingement and rotator cuff tears. It works by strengthening the external rotators, which are often the weakest link in shoulder stability and are essential for correct joint mechanics. The setup requires placing your elbow against a wall at shoulder height, bent at 90 degrees. Then you press the back of your hand into the wall. This isometrically engages the posterior rotator cuff muscles and their tendons, building stability from the back of the shoulder. The crucial error here is applying too much pressure too quickly. These are small tendons that adapt to consistent, moderate loading. Aggressive force will just cause inflammation and microtrauma, which completely counteracts the goal of gradual, controlled strengthening. And finally, the active dead hang. This is a compound exercise for the upper body's connective tissues. It builds significant grip and forearm tendon strength, while also decompressing the spine and helping to reverse the postural damage caused by prolonged sitting. There is a critical distinction here between a passive hang and an active hang. A passive hang just lets the shoulder distract and destabilize in the joint socket. An active hang, however, requires you to engage your lats to pull the shoulders down and away from your ears, creating spinal decompression while stabilizing the joint under load. Okay, so now that we've established the exercises, we have to understand the timeline that governs their application. The protocol's frequency and progression are dictated by the physiological principles of connective tissue repair. Adherence to this timeline is critical for success. The scientific basis for the schedule is clear. Collagen synthesis, which is the process of rebuilding tendon tissue, peaks approximately 72 hours after a sufficient loading stimulus. This physiological window makes a frequency of 3 times per week optimal for maximizing the cycle of stress, recovery, and adaptation. Your progression has to be systematic. As an example, a 6-week cycle for the calf raise hold could begin with a 30-second hold. Each subsequent week, you'd increase the duration by 15 seconds, culminating in a 2-minute hold. This gradual increase allows the tendon's remodeling process to keep pace with the stimulus.
This analysis forces a reevaluation of your training goals. The objective can be superficial muscular strength that's confined to the gym, or it can be deep, systemic resilience that prepares your body for the unpredictable physical demands of life.